It's time, Cougar Nation. Cougar Tracks. The best season analysis with BYU insider Mitch Harper on KSL NewsRadio and on video every day on the YouTube page for KSL Sports.
Welcome into Cougar Tracks here on KSL Sports YouTube and KSL NewsRadio. I'm your BYU insider Mitch Harper for KSLSports.com. The calendar has turned to September. It's Labor Day. Hope everyone's having a fantastic holiday. We're not taking any days off, though, here on Cougar Tracks daily show every single day, getting your BYU sports fix. And Cougar football is riding high after a blowout win over Portland State, 69-0. And that's where we start things off with the top story.
The top story of the day. The biggest story in the world of BYU sports right here on Cougar Tracks.
It was a beatdown of epic proportions. BYU crushed Portland State 69-0 in front of a crowd of 64,494 fans inside LaVell Edwards Stadium. Cougar Nation showed up. Biggest crowd at LES since 2009. Kind of blew me away. You know, BYU has had some great crowds, some big games, but to have the biggest crowd in 16 years, it speaks to the commitment, the investment from BYU fans and how excited everyone is, I think, for the program right now. During Independence, which basically covers that entire stretch between the last biggest crowd, TCU in 09, to now, it just shows Independence took some people away because the stakes weren't high. Even in a BYU Portland State game, the stakes are pretty high because you want to be a team that maybe can get to the college football playoff. And for a first game, BYU executed at a high level. And I think that's all you can ask for in these type of games. You know, BYU has experienced in the past some lackluster games against FCS teams. And you kind of go away from those games feeling like, ugh, that wasn't great. Then you go to the cliches, biggest leap from week 1 to week 2, and that never materialized. This was an excellent performance. BYU was up 49-0 at the half. They probably could have scored 100 points. Darius Lassiter, former receiver, he wanted that. Kalani was very kind and didn't run it up completely, even though there was a little bit more scoring than I expected from Kalani's squad as they tacked on a late touchdown for Charlie Miska to get on the board, and he's a walk-on running back who got a chance to score. But 69-0, Cougs are 1-0, and the big storyline coming out of that game was Bear Bachmeier, who I thought was really good in his first career start as a true freshman. 7 of 11 for 97 passing yards, 3 TDs through the air, a QB rating of 227.7. That's really good. And then on the ground, Bear, 5 carries, 32 yards, and 2 touchdowns, average 6.4 yards per carry. And Bear on the ground, too, it was in the second quarter. One of those 5 carries, he takes off, takes a hard hit from a Portland State defender, and he just pops right back up, and he heads back to the huddle, wasn't phased. And that size that he has kind of helps him on the ground. Heck, he's a centaur. How great was that quote, by the way? Bruce Barnum calling Bear Bachmeier a centaur. Maybe that's got to be the new nickname for Bear. Centaur Bear. I mean, his name alone gets people intrigued. And then the number. And now he's a centaur. He's a mythical creature. That's Bear Bachmeier, apparently. He was excellent for BYU. The defense was excellent as well. And we got a chance to see Keanu Tanuvasa in action for the first time. The former Utah transfer had 1 tackle, but you saw his impact, the pressure that he brings. He had a pass breakup. He had a quarterback hurry. Tanuvasa was everywhere in that early going as BYU's defense completely suffocated Portland State, holding the Vikings to only 51 total yards, -5 rushing on the ground. BYU's defense was on point on Saturday, and they looked every bit the part of a number 1 defense last year in the Big 12 and possibly have the chance to be better this season. BYU's offense finished with 606 total yards, 468 rushing yards, 138 through the air. The 468 on the ground is the most rushing yards by a BYU football team since 2013 against Texas. It's the most points scored since 2015 against Wagner. And it was just a highly productive night for BYU. 9.2 yards per play. Portland State only 1.2 yards per play. Portland State only had 44 snaps. BYU 66. Not much to complain about from that impressive win. And I think, too, what Bear Bachmeier showed in that is just the value of getting those first half snaps. And he just looked poised, calm, collected. And I thought that's the biggest thing that I came away from is BYU threw in a little bit of trickeration. It wasn't too exotic, but they threw in enough to maybe keep their future opponents guessing and trying to think, what new wrinkles are they going to throw out? We know BYU has an extensive playbook of specials in their arsenal, and they dabble with that a little bit. I thought that handoff to Cody Hagan that had so much motion and misdirections everywhere. Cody Hagan takes off, and Bear was just poised. He was not rattled at all by any of it. I thought he did a very good job for BYU in that game. I thought also, too, it was pretty cool just to see, tying into the crowd again, the star power that was on the sideline. We saw Puka Nacua, former BYU great, LA Rams star. He was in attendance at the game. And then New York Giants rookie Jackson Dart, he was there on the sidelines as well, as you see with Puka Nacua. Samson Nakua's there. The aura, man. Puka Nacua wearing the Rare Roses t-shirt. That brand's always been attached to Puka and Samson Nacua. But it was just a fun night of Cougar football to kick off a season that should be really good. And BYU now is the number one team in the Big 12 in the ESPN FPI, highest ranked team in the FPI in the Big 12, because the league as a whole looked pretty lackluster. The best teams, honestly, looked like BYU, Utah, Texas Tech. BYU and Tech played FCS teams. Utah handled UCLA. But, maybe in a world, in a crazy Big 12, could BYU get to Arlington with a true freshman? Such a long ways to go. I'm not trying to say they've arrived after handling Portland State, but I just think the execution was really impressive. Kalani Sitake he was pretty impressed too. And, Kalani's usually like, so much to clean up. Even he could admit there wasn't much to clean up. The penalties were an area where they probably want to get that fixed. They had 5 penalties, 2 of which from one guy on the offensive line, Jake Griffin. He's got to clean that up. Jordan Chris, he had a holding that took away Cannon DeVries. Great punt return, but it's a day that you can't complain much of what BYU accomplished in that game. Let's take our first timeout. On the other side, we'll get to more of my deep cut notes from BYU's win over Portland State and a whole lot more here on Cougar Tracks on the KSL Sports YouTube and KSL News Radio. Cougs are 9-1 after a season-opening win over Portland State, 69-0. BYU improves to 9-1 in season openers under Kalani Sitake. The lone loss was in 2019 against Utah. So BYU is excellent in season opening games under Kalani Sitake, who, by the way, Kalani, what do we think of the T-shirt look Kalani's rolling with? He's going with the T-shirt vibes. Nike dry fit. It was a nice cut. It wasn't just some raggedy undershirt, but just rolling with the T-shirt. Reminded me back in the day of Bronco back in 2010. Remember Bronco when he took over as the defensive coordinator? And it was in that season they let go of Jaime Hill. Bronco was wearing the polo, and then he just ditched that and threw on the Band of Brothers T-shirt. And he was rocking that every single week, almost like a good luck thing. It reminded me of that. Kalani going with the T-shirt and the hat. That's the sideline look for Kalani. We'll see what he's wearing. I just always associate Kalani with that quarter zip, short sleeve, dry fit Nike shirt. That's the Kalani look to me. But so he kind of threw in a new wrinkle on Saturday with the Nike dry fit. I thought it looked solid from Kalani. Here are some of my deep observations. I rewatched the game a couple times on Sunday just to kind of, get a better feel of everything from the game, because I'll just call it what it is. Sometimes when you're in the stadium, you just miss some things a little bit. It just happens. Yes, you've got the replay thing, the screen and all that, but there are just some little nuances that you missed. And it's kind of like a coordinator. You're in a controlled environment. You can kind of observe everything. Same with, replaying the game. You got a controlled environment. You're not distracted. You're just locking in, looking at all the alignment, all the personnel, kind of diving into things. And here are some of my deep cut observations from BYU's win over Portland State 69-0. Ephraim Asiata, he plays with so much violence. The targeting to me was kind of weak. That was called on Ephraim. But he should not slow down the way he plays. Ephraim Asiata is going to be a good one for BYU at that Sam linebacker position. I love the versatility that he can bring potentially to this team. He's going to be a good one. And, if this is the last ride for Isaiah Glasgow, who I thought was really good on Saturday with 1.5 tackles for loss, he's a redshirt junior. Glasgow, of course, could run it back next season. But I kind of just, it feels like it would make a lot of sense if he has a big year, which many believe, and myself included, think he will. NFL would make a lot of sense. Next in line, Ephraim Asiata. And I just love the physicality and the violence that Ephraim Asiata plays with. How about this? Trey Roberts, opening of the second half. Okay, game's in the bag, 49-zip. But Trey Roberts, with that second team offense, getting some run. Tanuvasa was out in the game. There was a handful of players with injuries, but Trey Roberts quietly making a name for himself in this program. I think he's going to be a receiver down the road where there's going to be investment into him. He had a nice fall camp. Remember that first scrimmage? He was one of 2 guys that had touchdowns in the first scrimmage, but Trey Roberts, Chase's younger brother, getting some opening of the second half snaps against Portland State, and valuable for him to get those snaps and opportunities in game. Speaking of deep cut players, there were 77 guys in total by my count, looking at the participation report, that played in this game. What a luxury for BYU to give some actual game snaps to so many different guys, because you got to think at some point you're going to dig into that depth and you're going to have to turn to some of these players. So giving them some actual game film and evaluate that film, what a nice luxury for BYU. BYU special teams kickoff, they kept hyping up the fans at the end of kickoffs. I thought that was kind of a fun little thing. They just seemed really energetic, hyped up, just like the whole crowd. I mean, that second half, BYU fans were still hyped. They were still energetic. It was just pretty impressive to see from Cougar Nation, and the special teams unit, kickoff team, kind of embraced that hype and excitement. A player on the defense that caught my attention in the rewatch, Kenny Laofonahema. He's adding some weight, but he looked good in the second half. And he's a redshirt freshman out of Springville, got, high potential. And I think adding weight has been the biggest thing for him to get to a point where he is a power 4 body. He's got the length of a power 4 D end, but adding weight, he was, way too thin to be playing in games last year, and that's why he redshirted. But now, I thought physically he looked really good in the trenches, and he's still maintaining that speed too. Kenny Laofonahema caught my attention in second half. Love the physicality and speed from Cannon DeVries in the punt return game. DeVries, he had that one that was taken away, which was a bummer. Jordan Chris got called for the hold, true freshman. But there was a punt return earlier in the game where DeVries lays the shoulder, and he's making some contact to get a few extra yards. DeVries, he's going to be a good one. I talked about him quite a bit in fall camp. He can play that inside corner spot. He can do a lot of different things. Wherever they place him, he will make an impact. Cannon DeVries is going to be a name to watch for BYU. But I'm very excited to see what he can do at BYU. Late in the third quarter, Trayson Bourget at quarterback, BYU was kind of patient and just, again, showing the good sportsmanship from Kalani Sitake to an outmatched, outclassed FCS team. BYU was patient and allowed Portland State to get its 12th player off the field. I don't know if you caught that, but I thought that was kind of a kind gesture by BYU. They're up big. Trayson Bourguet's at quarterback, and Portland State's trying to get a 12th player off the field. Instantly, BYU could have snapped. They politely let him get off the field. I thought just little subtle things like that are just good sportsmanship and kind of what Kalani's all about. I thought that was kind of noteworthy to me. Jake Griffin, I brought him up earlier. He had 2 penalties. Got to clean that up. I think Jake's going to be a good player for BYU, but clearly that was something Kalani, with the 5 penalties, he wants that fixed going forward, particularly in the trenches. Bourguet showed, going back to him, he showed an effortless ability to get the ball down the field. That one deep attempt that eventually set up the 56-yard Will Ferrin kick, I thought that was a nice ball by Bourguet. And, we saw moments of that from Bourguet in fall camp, but he threw an effortless deep ball. I thought it was a nice attempt by Bourguet. Jovesa Demooney, solid burst on his carry at the end of the third quarter. I thought that was a nice pickup, 11 or 12 yards or so. Jovesa's got good speed. We've talked about him quite a bit during fall camp, and he's probably that number 3 running back for BYU. Lucky Finau also caught my attention as well. He was more in the fourth quarter at running back, but he was a guy that switched over to running back from linebacker last season, dabbling at the running back position. He's Kalani's nephew. I thought he showed well, made the most of his opportunity getting snaps at the running back position. Dominic McKenzie, that touch, that was great to see him capitalize and get an opportunity on his first touch as a BYU Cougar and show off that speed and take it to the house for a touchdown. Dominic McKenzie, I don't know if he's the guy that's in that top 6, top 7, those guys that round out the 6 and 7 spots. See what I did there? Tay Nakua, Reggie Frischnecht. We didn't see either of those guys on Saturday. So, but Dominic McKenzie probably in that 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there, but building some confidence for down the road to be a factor for BYU. Sioua Latu-Finau, number 59, offensive tackle. He was playing at the left tackle spot. He's going to be one to watch down the road. Love his size in the trenches. BYU's got some young, talented offensive linemen in the future with Ethan Thomason, Andrew Williams, Latu-Finau. There's going to be some good competition at that offensive tackle spot, but seeing Latu-Finau operate at the left tackle spot, I thought that was of note to kind of take down for down the road, when he's in position battles going forward in the future. It was fun watching the game in the fourth quarter. On the rewatch, you see the shots of the coaches in the booth. You could just tell they were, for lack of a better term, kind of bored. Justin N is just holding his headset. You're just like, let's get on with Stanford week already. Like, let's just move on, stay healthy, get on with it. If there was ever a time in a D1 college football game to just have a running clock, I feel like that was the move. There have been instances of that. I think there was one year Florida State hammered Savannah State 84-zip. I think that was a running clock. It was kind of in that territory to me where it's like, run this clock, get in, get out, let's move on with our day. During the broadcast, too, I didn't catch this because obviously we were in the stadium over the weekend. Bear Bachmeier, the picture of him with Lucky Finau. Excuse me, not Lucky Finau, Logan Latui. Bear Bachmeier was wearing a Bobby Boucher jersey, the water boy. I love that because it shows he's got a little bit of personality, maybe a sense of humor. And heck, the water boy is just a classic, right? You can't go wrong with that. But Bear Bachmeier rocking the Bobby Boucher jersey, I like that. So that's some of my deep cut notes that kind of take away. It wasn't anything too groundbreaking, but I like the personnel groupings, just seeing some of the players that you're probably not going to see much the rest of the season, watching them operate in that second half. Before we get to a break, though, I did want to get to some BYU football recruiting news. The Cougs offered a quarterback in the class of 2026, Tradon Bessinger, Davis High prospect, class of 2026, the third highest rated quarterback in the state of Utah for the class of 2026 cycle. He announced on X his offer. BYU offered, grateful and humbled to be offered by Brigham Young University. Go Cougs. He announced that on X. and Instagram. But Bessinger, I had the chance to watch him at the Under Armour Next Camp at West High School back in May, and he could sling it. He is a good-looking prospect. And, BYU's been kind of dabbling with Bessinger for a while, but never offered until now. And he's one to watch. He takes care of the football. He's got a good TD to INT ratio, good completion rate. I think that would be a great get if BYU could land him, and he's currently committed to Boise State. Boise State's probably thinking, oh my gosh, here we go again. Beaver, their previous quarterback commit, he flips to Oregon. And now Bessinger, maybe does BYU flip him from Boise to BYU? He's going to be one to watch, but I think that would be a nice get for BYU if they could add him to that quarterback unit, which, of course, consists of, in the future, Ryder Lyons, the 5-star quarterback. He had accounted for 7 touchdowns in Folsom High's win over the weekend. Ryder Lyons continues to tear it up in his senior season with Folsom High. So wanted to check in on some of that recruiting news because I thought the Bessinger offer was quite noteworthy as BYU looks to potentially add another signal caller to this class of 2026 that already includes 5-star Ryder Lyons in this top 20 class. Let's take our final timeout. On the other side, we'll get to the Cougar Stock Exchange. It's all right here on Cougar Tracks. It's powered by KSL Sports. Welcome back into Cougar Tracks here on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports YouTube page. Every day, we're talking BYU sports daily. Subscribe to the show, leave a 5-star rating or review, subscribe to the KSL Sports YouTube page, wherever, however, you can listen, watch the show. Appreciate all of your support of Cougar Tracks. This daily endeavor has been awesome. I am loving every minute of it, so continue to support. Leave a rating and a review. It would help out the show a ton if you did that. I appreciate you, Cougar Nation, for doing that. But go give that 5-star and a review. It would help out the show a ton. But right now, it's time for the Cougar Stock Exchange.
The Cougar Stock Exchange. What's trending up and what's trending down? It's the Cougar Stock Exchange.
Mondays, we always roll out the stock exchange to analyze what's trending up and trending down for BYU. I'll just, spoiler alert, there's not much trending down. I can't get too nitpicky after a 69-0 win and a guy that emerged as a centaur. I can't say there's much trending down. But if I had to get a little nitpicky, maybe trending down the fast start piece. Okay? Maybe the fast start, the lack thereof, because it took some time for BYU to get things rolling, the special teams, the field goal block. That's what got it started. John Taumoepeau, he blocks it. Jack Kelly takes off, and then BYU was off and running. But until then, you had a offensive series that stalled. You had Parker Kingston with a fumble on a punt return. Maybe that's trending down. Aside from that, I'm not getting too nitpicky on that front. Now, I will say, another thing trending down, the need for games against FCS opponents. I harped on it a lot last week. I'd love to see that game, what we just witnessed over the weekend, in a spring game. How awesome would that have been in April or May? That's when that would have been great. And then to, have that, data point to give all those 77 players actual game film, and then go into fall camp having a better sense of how players performed. And then you go into fall camp and you open up with a Power 4 team or a group of 6 team. That's what I want to see eventually. Last thing, maybe on the trending downside. It's a little stat. BYU's win over Miami in 1990 being the last time a preseason number 1 fell in week 1. That's because Ohio State knocked off Texas, who was number 1 in the country. So BYU doesn't hold that distinction of being the last team to knock off a preseason number 1 in a lid lifter. So that stat goes away. So that, I guess you could say, that's trending down as well. What's trending up is Bear Bachmeier, the quarterback, the true freshman. Everyone's been talking about him, the centaur. Bear Bachmeier is trending up as we laid out on the stats. I just loved how he operated for BYU. And look, there were a few close calls, some of the passes where it's like, oh, like the crowd got a little nervous. But I think Bachmeier was really impressive. I did like, too, late in the game, how he's got his helmet on, and he acted like he's going to still go in, but he's watching. He's not just, getting distracted on the sideline. He was taking in every snap to learn and support his teammates. I thought Bear Bachmeier's trending up. Another guy that was trending up is John Taumoepeau. Taumoepeau was excellent. And if you listen to this show daily, we were talking about JT early and often back in spring ball, telling you about JT's going to have a huge impact for BYU. He was excellent on Saturday against Portland State. I mean, his impact was everywhere for BYU. He was tied for a team-high 3 tackles, had 1 tackle for loss, had 3 tackles, a half a tackle for loss, and then he had the fumble, forced fumble, and then also the blocked field goal as well. So John Taumoepeau trending up for BYU. And then LJ Martin, man, was he not awesome? 8 carries, 131 yards for LJ, who looks primed and ready for a big junior season at BYU. I've been saying it. He's just scratching the surface. That potential, that ceiling is starting to be realized with LJ Martin. So it was a huge weekend for the Cougars over the weekend, taking down Portland State 69-0. Now it sets the stage for Stanford week. Kickoff on Saturday night, 8:15 on the legacy home of the Cougars, KSL NewsRadio and ESPN. It's the first time since 2003 that the Cardinal are making the trip out to Provo. We will break down the Cardinal throughout the week, have some insider interviews with Stanford, and also break down this matchup in great detail over the week. So game week number 2 coming up here on Cougar Tracks. Subscribe to the show, leave a rating and a review, and I'll talk to you tomorrow here on Cougar Tracks, and it's powered by KSLSports.com.